Is 2026 the year you finally sell your business? Well, in this video, I'm going to go through as much as I humanly can to help you understand if your business is even sellable or not, and how to make it more valuable when you do decide to exit. Now, before you do anything, the link below, there's two links. There's one to the Exit Ready cohort. If you're ready to go ahead and sign up now. Two, I have a Google Sheet that has 50 different categories to help you understand how ready your business is to go to market. So be sure to check that out. That's the second link below. Okay, so in 2026, if you want to go to market and you want to sell, understand before we do anything, it's a 6 to 9 to maybe 12-month process to sell your business, and that's dependent on all kind of factors. And everything I say in this video, always remember there are so many variables at play that it's really hard to nuance every little detail, but I'm going to do the best I can so that you understand. So when you think about selling your business, the first thing you really have to realize is that most businesses don't actually sell. This is according to the EPI, the Exit Planning Institute. Only 30%, something 20%, but 30 to 20% of companies that go to market sell. That means that 70 to 80% of companies go to market and never actually get a buyer. And so if you think about it like this, it's not that you want to be in this 30%. That's goal one, right? You want to be in 30%, but you want to be the best that you can be in this 30%. Another way to think about it is if you said, well, I want to sell my business, but how much do I want to sell for, right? So it's in the 30%, and then how much do I want to sell for? Now, once you start to ask that question, you go, okay, well, how do I get in 30%? How do I make sure I can sell my company? And then beyond that, how do I get the most money I can get? Because selling your company for $1 million might not be your goal. Your goal might be to sell for $5 million. It might be to sell for $10 million. The key here is understanding the more that you want for your business, the more the buyers are going to expect from you. Let me say that again. The more that you want for your business, the more the buyer is going to expect from you. And when I say you, I mean your company, right? They're going to want cleaner financials, better operations, key staff, low customer concentration, all those things we're going to discuss here today. But if you want to get into the 30%, you have to also consider how much do you want to exit for. And if you don't have those kind of things in mind, then you're really going to struggle. Now, before we get into this, let me continue a little bit about my background in 30 seconds or so, and then we'll chat about all the things I have for you. I've spoken to over 350 owners about exiting and have been responsible for over $75 million in M&A deals. And let me tell you, as someone who's talked to so many owners, owner, you're not alone. Actually, the reality is most of the things that you struggle with, that you're nervous about, they're common, right? So getting the help that you need or watching a video like this and beginning to build your business is so important, because the reality is most owners have the same issues. They just look a little bit different. As I kind of akin it to going to an ice cream shop and you might all order vanilla ice cream. Some might like chocolate fudge, some might like peanut butter, some might like sprinkles. But at the end of the day, it's all kind of vanilla ice cream underneath it, and then what you get on top makes it unique to you. So if we're looking at this, the one thing I stress to owners is, I'll get the way here on for this, is that there's really two types of businesses. And now we're talking about the side hustle. That's not my audience. So I guess side hustle, but that kind of fits into the lifestyle. But lifestyle and sellable, right? So if you think about this, go, okay, I want lifestyle or sellable. The issue is that most owners bring lifestyle mentality, but they want to sell their business. And if you don't want to sell your business, if you want to live in the lifestyle lane, that's great. I totally get that. There's nothing wrong with that. Just understand you're going to need to retire, or you're going to die before you retire. Something's going to happen, right? You're going to die, you're going to retire, you're going to get sick, something's going to happen. So just make sure if you're in the lifestyle path that you say, okay, hey, how do I have my retirement set up in the lifestyle path? You can't harvest the value of your company. And if you're in the sellable business, what happens is most owners actually build a lifestyle business and they try to sell it, right? So if we go back here, it's lifestyle and sellable, and they're kind of over here. We talk about them in two different categories, but as we move ahead, they become closer. And then when a lot of owners go to market, they really have a lifestyle business they're trying to exit from. And it's not worth much, if anything at all. and they might need, 3 million, and it might be worth, 750K. And that's what I've seen so many owners go through. They think their company is worth 3 million and it's worth 750K. Let me give you some extremes here before you go any further, so you know I'm not 100% crazy. I talked to an owner 2 or 3 years ago, so the numbers are going to be a little bit fuzzy, but you'll get the point. They were doing between 90 and 100 million in revenue. I can't remember the number. We'll just say 100 to make this simple, but it was somewhere in there. Okay. And it was 2 partners, and they wanted to split up. They didn't like each other. They'd fallen out of favor, and they said, okay, well, we need to split up. We can't work together. And so they got a valuation done, and I think the valuation came in like $80 million. Okay. So partner A said, let me back up here. Partner A said, okay, if you give me, half, so you give me 40 million, I'll go my way. So partner B said, okay, well, let me go out and find a private equity group that will give him $40 million. I will stay on and I will grow the business through private equity, and then I will get the second bite of the apple. More or less. There's some more details, but that's the high level understanding. Reality. Of this $100 million, they were netting, I think, so they had 100 million, we'll say, they were netting like 1 million. So at the end of the day, when they closed the books, they only netted $1 million. So the value of the company was something like, in the group that they were working with, not the one that gave them the value, because they got a valuation that said it was 80. The group that they were working with to help sell their business, I think said like 15 million. So one owner had to convince the other owner, instead of getting 40 million, you're getting like 15 or 12 or something like that. It wasn't a ton of money off of $100 million in revenue. So if you think that, these numbers are crazy, my business is worth, a lot of money. But in reality, unless you've kind of gone to market and talked to an expert to see what the value of your company is, you really don't know. You really don't know what the value of your company is. And that's what gets so many owners in trouble, is that they wait too long and they wait to the very end to figure out the value of their company, and then they find out it's not worth what they think it is. If you've bought a home before and you've talked to a homeowner, or if you sold a home, you might have said something like, or heard something like, well, we installed these cabinets and we did this and we did that. And those things might be true. But it doesn't mean the new buyer, or you, if you were the buyer, wanted to pay extra for that. Just because the homeowner installed the cabinets, it doesn't mean that they changed the value of the home. They might have actually brought the value down, right? So owners have to understand that what they view as valuable is not necessarily what the buyer views as valuable. And so I stress to owners all the time, think through the buyer's eyes. Understand the buyer is your customer. And it sounds obvious. Well, they're a buyer, I'm selling, that's my customer. But a lot of owners don't think it like that. They don't think that the buyer is their customer. That is the person that's actually going to buy their business. The better you understand them, just like you understand your customers now, the better buyer you can attract. And so if you think about this process of selling your company, I always say I'm a free market capitalist. You can sell anything to anyone as long as it's a fair deal. And fair deal means that I agree to sell it to you for this much, this many dollars, and we're both being honest with each other. We're not hiding stuff and committing fraud, but more or less, right? So you might have a company and you might agree to sell it for $1 million, but if you did certain things, it might be worth 2, 3, or 4 million. M&A is a high stakes, high risk game. So from the buyer standpoint, they're going to want to invest money into your company, not knowing a lot about it. Now, they're going to go through a due diligence period, but if we're being honest, you've ran this thing for 15 years. You know the ups and the downs. You understand all the stuff that's going on. You know what a big threat is, and you know what a big threat isn't. The buyer can visualize it in their mind, they can think about it, but they haven't lived with that pressure. And so you're asking them to give you money for this thing that you know very well. The better you position your company, the stronger it is, the better buyer you will attract, and the more they will pay you. That's what gets lost in all this. It's not about saying, okay, I want to sell my company and I need to attract buyers, and the buyers that I'm going to attract, they're going to try to, hose me over. I'm going to do some content on that so owners understand what's going on. But the reality is that most buyers that are premium buyers want good companies, and they will pay a premium for it. Why? Well, if you said, I'm going to give you $1 million right now. Ryan is going to give you, Tom, we'll say $1 million. But Tom, you got to pay it back. And here's the conditions. You have to go to the casino and put all your money on red on roulette. And so if you lose it, you got to pay back the $1 million. If you win it, you still got to pay it back, but you got, $2 million or whatever it is. Would you take that deal? No. Why? There's too much risk. Too much risk. Unless you got a bunch of money and you're really risk adverse, you're never going to do that. What if I said, okay, I'm going to give you $1 million. You got to pay it back. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to buy an asset that's going to pay back $100,000 a month. This myth, this fake asset, it's going to give you $100,000 a month. And here's the proof it does this. And so what I want is you get 100, so split that in half, give me $50,000 a month and pay me back plus a little interest. Would you take that deal? And I've got a track record to show you for 10 or 15 years what I said is true. It's not just some hyped up thing. It's actually real. Like there's real proof that this has happened. And so, yeah, you might take that, right? You might take that. Going, okay, well, for 20 years, this company has produced $1 million a month. $100,000 a month of cash profit. He wants half. Okay, so if it was $1 million a month, I paid him back, that'd be like, 10 months. And so if it's 50, that's 20 months. Okay, so maybe a little interest, we'll say 24 months. Yeah, I might take that deal. So you might actually ask for more money too. You might say, well, hold on. Can I buy 3 of these assets? Give me $3 million. I'm take that risk, right? So the stronger you build your company, the more someone will pay for it and the better buyer you will attract. And the better buyer has more money, and they view money differently. They view it as, okay, I'm going to invest $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, whatever it might be, so that I earn back a great return on my investment. On the other end of the spectrum of M&A, you hear of these big, huge deals. 2 big corporations will merge together, or one will buy the other one out. And those will trade for crazy multiples, right? So they'll trade for 10, 20, 30x, or whatever it might be, 40x EBITDA multiple, or they'll trade for big, huge numbers, or stock. I don't get all that stuff. They'll trade for big numbers. Why is that? Because company A knows that by merging or buying company B, it's a safe return on their money, or they view it that way at least. How do you make your business a safe return on someone's money? And that's what we're going to go through this process. Okay, so what is sellable? And this, going back to the slides a few minutes ago, we said sellable versus lifestyle, right? So you want to get out of the lifestyle business and you want to build a sellable business. Or if you're going to have a lifestyle business, understand that if you're going to sell that, you change your mind maybe 3, 5, 7 years. Understand that when you go to get rid of that, you will have to have done some of the things I'm going to tell you over a period of time. You can't just wave a magic wand and have all this done and then people go, oh, well, he went from lifestyle to sellable from Monday to Tuesday. Let's buy it. That's not how it works. Okay, so let's go through this. So what is sellable? Sellable means the business survives and thrives through a change in ownership. The business survives and thrives through a change in ownership. And think about that. You, right now, like your business and go, okay, well, I am not worried about my company surviving or thriving over the next 3, 6, 12 months, much less 3, 6, 12 years. You might believe that. That's great. How do you build it out in a way that the new owner believes that, right? How do you build it out so the new owner believes that it will survive as I'm defining it here, means it can pay the note, right? It's going to be able to pay the note. So it has to be able to survive just to pay the note. Thrive, as I would describe it here, means that it's going to put money in their pocket above what they already expect. So if their note, just to use simple math, is, $100K a year, well, it's got to survive just to cover that, right? Now, if it's going to thrive, maybe it puts, $200K extra in their pocket. So it's covering this note. So it's covering the 100K. They're making an extra 100K, but if it thrives, maybe it's going to put an extra 200K, so they end up with 300K. I don't know. I'm making up numbers here. These are all made up, but you can see like survives and thrives. The better that you can establish your company to look as if it's going to survive and thrive, the more likely you are that it's going to sell for a premium. And premium is the key word here. I got to stress this over and over and over again. Premium means you're going to get someone that's going to pay you top dollar. Now, top dollar does not mean what you want. It could mean that. Top dollar is what the market says your company's worth. And those things can be the same and they can be different. So you might want $5 million and top dollar for yours, it's $5 million, and you build out a company that's worth $5 million. Boom. But you might want 5 and your company's worth 2. They're not going to pay that. So you want to understand what's the top dollar for my type of company, in my type of industry, my type of area that I can build out and sell for. Like, what's the top dollar? And this is kind of gets lost in some of this online talk, because if you own a convenience store in the middle of nowhere, the top dollar, I don't care how good you run it, the top dollar someone will pay is much different than the convenience store that's in a prime area in Dallas, Texas. It's just different. There's more traffic, right? So the customers are just going to come through Dallas, Texas a lot more than the middle of nowhere. So you got to understand that thing. What's the top someone will pay for a company like mine, where I'm at, understanding my geography, and if you're getting local customers, how can they survive and thrive? What do they have to do to make sure it transitions smoothly? Do they have to invest a bunch? So what's the top dollar that my type of company can earn? And so if we go here real quick, let me pull this up. I'm gonna go through these categories. But we might go through and say, well, okay, everything's in ranges. Everything's in ranges because that's how it has to be. But let's just say that the top, range for your type of company is $6 to $8 million, right? So if someone pays for where you're at, kind of understand your company, $6 to $8 million. So if your current value is $4 million, then that means the top that you can get is $4 million. And if that's all you want, that's all you need, great. But it doesn't mean it's the most that you can get. So the question is, what do you have to do to get this money, right? So if you say, okay, what do you have to do? And some of these things are things that are simple that you can do. Again, go to the checklist below, sign up for the email, and you give me your email, and I'll shoot that to you. Some of these things are easy to do. Some of these things take time. They take, a year or 2 years, or even 3 years. It depends on you, your business, and where you're at. Okay, so let's go to the next thing. Here are the categories we're going to talk about. Financial health, owner independence, risk exposure, the scale engine, and strategic position. And before we go further, the link is below, but rgahub.com is where you can get the newsletter as well, the assessment. Okay, so let's go through financial health, right? So that's number one. We're going to start here. Financial health. Do the numbers tell the truth? Now, if you're an owner and you built a house and you ran through the company, then the numbers don't tell the truth, right? Do the numbers tell the truth? Are they actually real? I have a client right now, and they are amazing. They don't write off anything through the business. It's great. It's really good. It makes that part of the process so much easier. They have other issues, but as far as this issue goes, they're a 10 out of 10. Like, I was talking to a tax attorney the other day, 10 out of 10 for this, which is great because a lot of owners right here, they've been running personal expenses through the business. And I'm not talking about like your iPad. I'm talking about your Mac or your camera or your iPhone. I'm talking about that. I'm talking about serious expenses. Jackie Hirsch on one of the episodes the other day mentioned someone ran a boathouse through their company to lower taxes. And so it lowered taxes, but what it did is whatever that tax benefit was, right? So the taxes, I don't remember what she said, so I'll make this up, but their tax basis went down by, 250K, we'll say. Okay, but it cost them a multiple on their company. So instead of selling for 3x, instead of selling for, let's just make the math up here, 3.5, they sold for 3.2. Okay. Now, you might go, what's the difference in that? Well, let's just do some quick math here. So if the basis we're going off of, let's make it $1 million just to make it easy. So if the basis was $1 million, $1 million, instead of selling for 3.5 million, they sold for 3.2. Now, that's $300,000 for a $250,000 expense to run the company. And did they save $250,000 in taxes? Well, no, they didn't. And I can't remember the numbers. A lot of times stuff like this is even more exorbitant. Like it's even, the spread's even larger. But you save a little bit on taxes because you ran it to the company. But at the end of the day, the multiple goes down, and that multiple goes down. Then all of a sudden you lose significant dollars. So they should have paid for the boathouse or whatever it was out of their pocket, pay that $250,000, and then they would have got a better multiple. And you can go back and find the episode, and we'll link to it right here, so you can find that. But she talks about that. But this is common. Okay, so financial health. So here's a few things that owners that I've heard think that profits over time mean. Last year matters most, and I hear this a lot. Last year we did, $3 million. Well, you did $3 million. Well, let me go back here. You did $3 million. Well, I'm going the wrong way. Last year you did $3 million. Okay, cool, great. But the year before that you did $1 million, and the year before that you did $500K. And the problem here, on some level, becomes that you will see about these tech startups. These tech startups will go, hockey stick growth, and companies will pay big money for that. But for your business, that's probably not the case. You're probably not a tech startup. You're probably not in the VC world. You're probably not going to get the valuation. So last year matters, but if last year you did 3 and the year before you did 1, well then what changed over these years? And then how do you ensure, are you saying that next year you're going to do 5, 6? What are you going to do? Is it leveled off at 3? Is it going to go back down to 2? What's going to happen, right? So that's one thing. The next thing is, one strong year is all you need. So people will say, well, the opposite of what I just described might be something like this. So they might say that, okay, they did, in 24 they did 3 million, but then in 25 they did 2.5 million, and then 23 they did 2 million. And so what they want is, instead of saying, well, last year was great, we want to focus on 24 numbers, because that was $3 million. Buyers aren't going to go for that. They're going to want to understand why you have this wild swing of $1 million one way or the other. Like, what changed? Is it sustainable to reinstitute those things? Was it a one-time customer? Did you get fired? Maybe you landed a big client, you got fired. Like this brings questions, not gives answers, right? This just shows you something. So, and then they want to thought bad years. So they might say, well, 23 was a really bad year. So that was a bad year for us. Well, 23. So, okay, cool. Bad year for you. Gotcha. But what about what happened? Like, was it unique? What'd you do to fix it? Why is that year no longer in play? They do count. Now, if you had a bad year in 95, okay, that's one thing. No one cares about that. Like, that's not really relevant in 2026. But if you had a bad year in 24 or 23 or 25, then that's going to raise flags. People are going to start saying, well, red flag here. People are going to start saying, well, what happened? Why? Explain this to me. Can you show the trajectory? So a minute ago, I showed you that, we think about tech companies, and we kind of think of that hockey stick growth, right? That really are up and to the right, like it's going crazy. And so, but for most small businesses, it's kind of like that, right? It's kind of like that. Well, let's get that last line. It's kind of like this. And so you're hoping that when you're selling here. Let me get off the screen here so you can see. When you're selling, you're hoping that you're selling here. And so when you sell, you're going to explain this year, this year, this year. But if it's kind of level like it is here, you're going from, let's just say, 2.5 to 3.1. That's kind of the range of these gaps is 2.5, and then the top is 3.1. And then now all of a sudden you're capturing some market share, and that market share goes back to 23. So this starts at 23, and then 24 you're here, and then 25 you're here. Now all of a sudden you got a story, right? The story was we were here for all these years, and then we made these changes right here, and we made those changes. This is what happened. Now later on in the video, you're going to hear me say some stuff that sounds contradictory. And so keep this in mind, that this looks great, but it has to be presented, it has to work in a certain way, or it doesn't really matter. And so I say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the way that you think it is. So when I talk about customer concentration in a minute, remember that this chart, well, I'll try to do this again and we'll come back to this. Okay, so here's what it actually looks like. Profit stays steady or grows for 3 years. Remember that kind of chart I drew, right? That. And if you are going to have that kind of a growth, that you have that history that goes back here, and you can pinpoint what you did here, why it's growing up. And so it's growing over 3 years. Right now, all of a sudden, 25, 24, 23 is in that zone. You're like, okay, now we're capturing that growth. That's how you capture that growth. 1 year, one off year is not how you do that. Swings have clear causes. This was a big problem in 2021, 2022, because you would talk to owners, and what would happen is they had to deal with COVID. And everyone knew about COVID. It wasn't some random thing that this was heard about, right? Everyone knew about COVID. So maybe they were kind of doing like that, and then COVID did that, and they're coming back up. Well, there's a question of how long is that impact going to be? How do we know that you're actually going to now sustain this kind of growth or this kind of level moving forward? Now, we're kind of removed from that. So a lot of companies in 21, 22, we were hearing a lot of that in 23. We're hearing, I say hearing that, looking at the numbers, you're hearing that. But now you're kind of beyond that. So people might still go back 5 years to see, or, I can't imagine 7, but 5 years, they might ask you about COVID, what impact it made. You should be past that by now, but the tariffs last year might have caused your company to do this. And so now all of a sudden, the tariffs, if we're thinking about our chart, something like tariffs might have done this to your business. And so you're coming back. And so people say, well, the tariffs, how is that going to impact going forward? Or, as I'm recording this, we're waiting on the ruling from the Supreme Court on the tariffs. So we'll see what plays out there, but buyers are going to ask questions. So the swing having a cause could be something like COVID, could be something like the tariffs, and then buyers are going to know, how have you made it through that? What did you do? How do we know that the new numbers are going to be real? It could be stuff like, interest rates on debt. It could be other stuff. We lost a key employee, and so we had to replace that person. So, you can see this dip here. That's when Tom left, and when Tom left, we had to replace him. But after he left, we put new systems in place, and that's fixed now. So you need to have a cause that you can explain and help the buyer feel comfortable that you've fixed that issue. Sometimes the issue is internally, like with your company. Sometimes it's external, but you got to have a story for that so they understand it and explain it to them. And 1 month does not make or break you. Break the you is what I put on there, but break you. And here's what that means. Okay, so let's say that, you lived in Texas and there's a huge snowstorm and it shuts everything down. And so if you're looking at your chart, for the year, you have this one bad year and then it goes on. One bad month. And so did that bad month end the business more or less? I say end. It put you in a crunch. You couldn't really move forward. You couldn't do the things you want to do because you had that bad month. Or did you have that bad month you didn't plan for because of the big snowstorm or something crazy happened, and you made it through. You made it through, right? So one bad month does not make or break you. Another thing is, if you reverse this chart and you said, okay, well, it can't break you, but what about, you have a chart like that, okay? Well, if all of your profit comes from this 1 month, really, you got a problem, right? How do I make money the other months of the year as a buyer? How do I ensure that I'm going to hit, if we just keep February, how do I ensure I'm going to hit these February numbers? Because if I'm saying, I made $1 million in profit, but 800,000 of that came from this 1 month. Are there ways to level it out to make that feel better throughout the year? Are there not? What happens if that month goes down? What's our expenses? Stuff like that. So those are the questions that buyers are going to ask you. Okay, so let's go to clean books. As I mentioned earlier, I have a client now, 10 out of 10 clean books. They are amazing. And so let's look at this. Taxes are filed. This is important, especially most owners are selling under the SBA rules. And so that's 5 million or less. A lot of the buyers in that range are using SBA financing. They're going to look at your taxes. So the owners think, oh, my taxes are filed. Cool. The CPA, I sent the CPA, they handled it. No big deal. It's done, right? The CPA handled it, and the numbers are close enough. Close enough. And this gets a lot of owners in trouble, because close enough doesn't mean right. And if you're going to risk millions of dollars on an SBA loan that's personally guaranteed, close enough might not cut it. It might not cut it. And so your CPA over here, they handle it, but what is the CPA doing? Are they trying to help you avoid paying taxes? Are they trying to help you make sure that you don't cross that red line to get an audit? Are they trying to help make sure that you have no expenses through the business that's personal? What are they trying to do? Because a CPA, there's a bunch of them out there and a lot of great ones, but what are they trying to do and how does their role tie into this process? Okay, so here is what this actually looks like. Monthly reports match reality, right? So each month you're getting a report and it shows the profit, the loss, everything that buyers care about, and it matches the reality of the company. Margins are industry norm. And I want to focus on this just for a second. Margins being an industry norm is really important. Well, not norm, and here's why. So if in your industry, the margin is 20%, right? So 20% margin is the norm, and you're in that 20% range. Everyone expects that. But let's say that your margins are 10%. Well, that's going to hurt valuation, right? So your buddy who got a 3 or 4 or 5x off of their company, maybe they had a 20% margin. On the other end of the spectrum, if you've got a 35% margin, that's going to raise a lot of questions. It's not bad. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm saying understand that if your margins are so great, buyers are going to go, well, how is this owner doing this? Is this legit? Is this real? And that's where things like Q of E will come into the equation, because they're going to go, well, how are you doing 35%? Maybe they're going to love it if you can prove that it's real, that I'm actually doing 35%. The other thing that can happen here is you might say your margin is 20%. I'm sorry. Yeah, 20%. But the books only show 10% because you get cash. And so you get so much cash that you only show a 10% margin on the books, but really you have a 20% margin. And so buyers are going to push back hard on that, because how do they know the cash is real? You hadn't filed your taxes, you haven't claimed it anywhere. It's this fake number from their perspective that you're making up, saying, oh, well, you got a 20% margin, but you can't show me that. You can show me a stack of cash, but where'd that come from? I don't know. Okay, so anyone, and this ties in, right? Anyone reading the books reaches the same answer, right? The same answer, whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's a buyer, whether it's a first-year student at a finance school, they reach the same answer. This company is doing this much in revenue, this much in profit, this much in SDE, this is their EBITDA. Like, they're going to come to the same conclusion because of the fact the books are clean. Later on, we're talking about EBITDA and SDE a little bit. My advice just on this caveat here is that is something that buyers and sellers will argue over, especially the more complex the deal. So don't try to calculate your SDE or your EBITDA on your own. Get a third party to do it. But the cleaner your books are, the less questions like this that will be asked. Okay. So CPA review, right? So it's important that you have your CPA review your financials with an exit in mind. And you need a CPA that's familiar with M&A. If you don't know one, or a tax attorney maybe, reach out, have you put you in contact with one. So a tax return means review. A tax return, I messed this slide up here. Yep, 2 things there. The numbers are close enough, and there it is again, close enough, right? Oh, the personal expenses are here. No. This is what it actually looks like, right? So when you think about this The CPA has looked at your books in the past year. They've looked at your books in the past year, and they said, okay, they've checked for accuracy, not just compliance, right? So there are ways in which CPAs can help you lower your tax basis that might be good for you as a small business owner, but they aren't actually the best way to take your company to market, right? So they check for accuracy, not just compliance. So you want to make sure that you tell your CPA you're thinking about selling, and you work with a CPA who's experienced in M&A. A lot of times people will work with professionals who aren't experienced in M&A, and they get bad advice. And then errors get fixed, not just explained away. They get fixed, not just explained away. So what does that mean? They get fixed. Okay, well, if you're running your personal expenses through the company, you don't just tell the buyer, oh, I'm running my personal expenses through the company. No, you stop doing that, right? You stop doing stuff like that. That's an error, as I'm calling it, that's going to get fixed, not just explained away. So as we go back, let's talk about add backs. So owners think about add backs. Add backs is anything extra counts. This is what owners might think. One-time costs are normal, and add backs explain low profit. Well, let's just pause here and think about that. If someone told you, oh, you're going to buy that company, and you're going to buy that company, and you're going to say, hey, tell me what you're doing here. And the owner says, well, I built a boathouse last year, and I did this, and I want you to account that as part of the profit margin. Okay, well, the amount of work that you're going to have to do to verify that those add backs are real, first off, you might not even want to do, because it's just like, okay, well, if you ran the boathouse through the company, I gotta go check all those receipts. I gotta do that. I gotta hire someone to do that. Okay, maybe a Q of E, depending on the size of the deal, is going to be here. Sometimes you will see stuff to where they are expected. Like we had a deal one time to where a company had done a one-off renovation, and it's like once every 15 years they do this. They just done it, so that was an add back. It's like, okay, your margin dropped a little bit, but this add back, okay, like this is not an expected expense that the new owner is going to have to incur for 15 years, and so there's ways to calculate that. So as we look at this, we go, okay, well, what are they, right? They repeat year to year in best case scenario. They tie to real expenses, things that the new buyer can go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Just like the analogy of every 15 years you got to renovate the place. Okay, that makes sense. It's a real expense. And a third party can verify them fast. And that's the thing, fast, right? The longer it takes to put the store together, the more likely the deal is to fall apart. So you want buyers to be able to verify them fast. Personal spend. Oh, this is a joyous one here, right? Owner runs expenses through the business. Let me just say right now, if this is you, stop doing this. Just stop. You need to stop today. You need to make sure that you start running only business expenses through the company. Only business expenses through the company. If not, all of a sudden, the buyer is going to look at this and go, well, I'm not really sure. You claiming all these personal expenses, and we've, man, you filed on taxes, and on SBA deals, they're going to look at your taxes, and you're going to raise a bunch of problems that buyers are not going to want to deal with. And to deal with it, it's going to cause them a headache. And for that headache, they're not going to want to pay you as much just because they had to go through all this process. They want clean books. Clean books. Of all the things we're going to discuss today, this might be the thing that's most in your control. Clean books, right? Clean books is something that you can do, today. Starting today, say, I'm going to clean my books. So what does this actually look like? Well, let's take a look at that. Personal costs stay out of the P&L. Personal costs must stay out of the P&L. Don't do this. You're just the small tax write-off that you're going to get for building something through your business or stuff like that is not worth what it's going to cost you when you sell. Again, the iPhone, the Mac, stuff like that, really small stuff that's tied to the business that you're using for both, not really in play here because you're going to use your computer at home and at work and stuff like that. And it's, a couple $1,000. It's not really going to play. Unless you're buying like 47 Macs for everyone in your family. Like, it's not really going to play. The payroll reflects the real work. Let me give you an example here. The other day I was talking to someone, and they have a payroll of $5-something million. And I said, okay, well, if we looked at the bank account, would it show that much money is coming out of the banks? I said, absolutely. And that's what buyers want to hear, that the payroll is going to reflect the real work, which also means that if you have a bunch of family members that you're paying, buyers are going to go, oh, okay, we got to take that off. That's an add back. You can have some of that stuff, but it's just going to raise questions that you're going to have to answer and then verify. The buyer's going to have to verify. So if you have, 3 family members on the payroll, and then you're saying, well, it's, my wife, my son, and my daughter are on the payroll, but they don't do anything important. The buyer now has to verify that those people are not relevant to the business, because they might not want to buy a family-owned and family-ran company. So they're going to verify that, right? So by taking them off the payroll, yes, it is a problem. You can get around this, but the buyer will ask questions around this. And profits reflect reality, right? So the profits have to reflect reality. Going back to the margins, if you're taking cash, try to stop taking cash as soon as possible, or make sure all the cash is being accounted for, because otherwise you're going to have to explain how the profits really added up when you've got a ton of cash on the books, in the bank account, that you're not really showing on the books. So let's talk about seasonality. That's one thing that you hear a lot is, and I did that chart earlier where you'd see kind of that big spike, something like that, and that's seasonality. Some companies are torn by this. That you hear a Black Friday, right? Companies getting into the black. That's those big companies who can afford to make it through the year and then they get into the black on Black Friday. At least that's the conventional wisdom and the talking points that you hear. For your business, you might have seasonality. You might have a company that's really busy in a certain part of the year, and that part of the year is where you make a lot of hay. For those type of companies, just make sure that they're being planned for, right? They're being planned for, so that you're showing that, okay, hey, we know right here, we've tried things, we can't get out of this, but we know right here, that's when we make most of our money, and this is how we make sure that we manage payroll and staff the rest of the year. Our expenses are covered. We don't just take all the profits out of the company and we struggle during these periods. We understand how to average our costs out across the year so that our expenses, average our costs out and then average our this money infusion out so that we're not scrambling the jets, where we can cover the dips, because it might, instead of that, it might look like this, it might look something like that. Like you can see stuff like that. Okay, well, how are you showing that you're planning for this period of time? You don't want to show a company that's scrambling to survive. A company that's going, okay, every year we're dipping into some kind of loan, we're applying for credit, we're using these levers to make sure that we make it through this period, to make it to the next year. We're limping ahead. That's not a company that buyers want to buy. They want to buy something that from a cash perspective, the cash perspective looks like this. Maybe it goes down, but the cash in the bank, it's going to see that dip, but then it's as level as you can make it, right? So they understand that the owner knows how to plan for this, so that when they buy it, if they're going to buy a business that's tied to seasonality, they know exactly how to plan for those cash infusions that are going to be needed during the slow period. Accounts receivable. Oh, this is big here. I've worked for a company before. It's one that I ran for many years. Accounts receivable was tough. And this was tough because we worked for really big companies, right? And those really big companies, they kind of had you. They could pay you or not, and what are you going to do? We had a company one time that held $1 million for us for a year. We finally had to get the lawyer to threaten to sue them. They were paying us for other stuff, but for that, they wouldn't pay us. And so finally, we had to get the lawyer involved, and then they finally paid. So is that a good customer? No, that's not a good customer. Good customers, they pay late occasionally, but they don't pay late over and over and over again. That's not a good customer. But in an owner's mind, they're covering all of your expenses, potentially, or a large portion of them. And so all of a sudden you think, well, good customers pay late. No, good customers do not pay late. That is a misnomer. It's part of the relationship. Owners might think, oh, this is part of how it works, give and take. No. It's not. It's them taking advantage of you, right? It's them taking advantage of you. And so what you want to see is AR AR stays within terms. So what are the terms? The terms 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Can you shorten those terms? So right now, if it's 90 days, can you move it to 45 days, stuff like that? But you need to have terms with your clients saying, okay, I need to be paid preferably in 30 days. That's the perfect case scenario, right? Every 30 days, we're bringing in the cash. But if it is, 90 or 45, you have to make sure that your clients are paying in that window. Again, a buyer's going to look at this, they're going to ask questions. Old balances, the one that go past, so let's just say it's 90 days. Well, for the ones that's 120 and beyond, day 91, what are you doing? Or is it day 95? Day 95, whatever it is, maybe it's day 100. What are you doing at that period to start chasing that money? Is it letters? Is it emails? How do you collect on clients that won't pay you? You have to have a system in place to show that you are chasing that money. Otherwise, the buyer's gonna come in and go, well, these clients are used to not paying on time. I don't want to wait 120 days or 140 days or whenever the client feels like it to cut a check. I don't want that. What I want is to be paid every 30 days. Well, I can't go from 90 to 30 day one. Okay, but I can live with 90. I have to live with 90. But okay, I see that, like 40% over here of your AR is actually 120 days or 150 days or something like that. It's way out there and there's no process. You're not even letting the client know that they're not paying. So how do I ensure that when I buy this company that I can fund payroll, I can fund this company, because I don't want to wait 120 or 150 days. Those are things that buyers are going to be concerned with. The final thing is, late payers do not control cash flow. Now this is tough, right? This is tough. And again, we're getting to customer concentration here in a minute, but we're going to talk about that. And so, if the late payers here that are paying the 120, right, if those are the ones that are controlling the cash flow, you've got a big issue, because now you're dipping into credit lines to cover the cash flow of your business. It's not really cash flow anymore. It's being serviced by debt. So how do you fix that issue? Again, let me pause here. If you have questions, you go, how do I build a sellable business, a business that people want to buy? Make sure that you click on the second link below. I have a Google Sheet that will allow you to go through and kind of rank yourself of what you need to work on. And if you're ready to be exit ready, go ahead and join the cohort today. I'm going to talk briefly about EBITDA and SDE. Let me go back here. EBITDA and SDE. Let me go back. And so my advice to you, let me just say this as nicely as I can. I've yet to talk to a company that's not had a third party review it that has nailed this, right? It's not happened. I've talked to some companies who have had third party review it and give them the number, but owners who try to calculate this themselves, it's almost always wrong. So get a third party to do this for you. Your EBITDA or your SDE. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, and its SDE is seller discretionary earnings. So get a third party to do this, and again, a third party that understands M&A, because I've seen CPAs calculate this wrong. So I won't spend a ton of time here. Just make sure you get someone who's well versed in this to look at these numbers, because the important thing here is your company is going to trade more than likely on a multiple of that, right? So the better you understand your current EBITDA or SDE, depending on the size of your company, the better you understand it, the more likely it is that you can understand whether or not your company is worth what you want to be worth when you go to market. So if you think that your company's EBITDA, we'll just use EBITDA, is $1 million, and then you think, okay, I can probably sell for, I always joke, the margin is 3 to 7x. Let's say 3 to 7x. So 1 times 3, so that's $3 million, right? We can do that math with the calculator. But if your EBITDA is actually $500K, it's actually $500K. Well, instead of 1.3, you get what, 1.5. You can see just how that miscalculation of this number, this starting spot, can have a huge impact. Buyers will question the EBITDA. They will question the SDE. The bigger you go, they're going to want a quality of earnings, right? So they're going to want to make sure that those numbers are right. But at the core, you need to get this part done so you understand what your number is right now. So as you're deciding how much you want to build, how much effort you want to put into this, you at least understand where you're at. Because the last thing that you want to do is to build a company with the basis going, okay, like that company a minute ago, I said that did $100 million in revenue, or $100 million in revenue. That company did not understand their EBITDA at all. They were misled on it, and the valuation they were given was terrible by some discount valuation group. I didn't know who did it. I remember some of the people working on it, like, we never heard of these guys. So they got bad information, bad advice. Again, reach out to me and put you in front of people that can help you with this. But you really have to do this, because it's not worth going through the process of building your business if you can't understand what these numbers are, where you're starting at, and then where you're actually going. And then finally, I'll say, if we go back to this, you look at it and say, well, okay, my EBITDA, let's just go back to this. Let me just clear this off here. Let's go back to this $1 million EBITDA number just for 1 second here. Let me get off the screen. Okay. So if we go back to this, we're going to use $1 million just because the math is easy. So if your EBITDA is, $1 million, right? Okay. And you've had this vetted by someone who knows how to do this, right? Great. So this is true. This is true. And then you have someone in the industry tell you that companies like yours trade for 3 to 4x, right? That's $1 million. This is deceiving because it's small numbers, but right, this is selling for 3 million or selling for 4 million, right? You want to understand, what does it take to get to $4 million? Like, what does it actually take to get me here? And do I have the time, energy, and effort to get here? Maybe I don't. Maybe I can only get to like a 3.4 to 3.6. Maybe that's all I can get to. I don't have time to fix some of these issues. They take longer than 3 months or 6 months. They take maybe 2 or 3 years, depending on what's going on. Okay, so I want to get 3.4 to 3.6. Maybe I'm content with 3 million, and I understand that I can get to 4 million, but I'm ready to sell now. I'm ready to be done. Like, I have had enough of this thing, and I can live off of $3 million. So you have to know what your number is, what your exit number is, what's going to make you happy. Post-retirement, what's going to make you happy. How are you going to live? That doesn't take that long. Talk to a financial planner. It doesn't take that long to figure all that out. And then understanding the value of your company can then help you determine whether or not your company is worth what you want to be worth now. And then if you talk to someone who's good in the space, say, okay, well, this is what's worth now. It's worth 3 now. To get to 4, what are the levers I have to pull to get me to $4 million? And so if you're going, well, I don't understand how that works, let me give you a real example here. So I have a client, and I wish these are on slides, so I got to back all this up, so apologies. And their valuation came in between 8 to 10. And like I said, everything's a range in M&A, right? 8 to 10, right? But if they fix one thing, it'd probably be worth 15, maybe more, maybe 20, probably 15 to 17, but say 15 to 20, depending on how good they fixed it and stuff like that. Okay. Now you go, man, why don't you just fix this one thing and get 15 to 20? Well, to fix this one thing, it's going to take 1.5 years from the time it's fixed. From the time it's fixed, not once not from today, once it's fixed. So then the question is, how long does it take to fix it? Well, the owner is guessing it's going to take at least 1 to 2 years just to fix it, right? So you're talking about 3.5, 4, 5 years to fix that, to make this extra $7 million. For some owners, they might say, yeah, I've got the time, the energy, the strength. Let's do it. For some owners, they say, well, I can get 8 to 10 now, I'm out. Great, right? So that's why these things are in play. You have to understand what's going on, what's your business worth today, and how best to prepare yourself for an exit. So then the next thing we're talking about is risk exposure. Risk exposure. And with risk exposure, what could break this business, right? What could break this business? Again, from the buyer's perspective, this is a risk. They are risking buying your company. So what can break this business? Now, as owners, we might say, well, I know what can break the company. I know where the risks are. And you do. You know exactly where the risks are. Now, I'm not talking about the crazy stuff that we've seen like in 2020 where the world shuts down, or maybe something like tariffs that you can't control. I'm talking about You understand the risk from a day-to-day perspective. You understand if this customer leaves, if this employee leaves, stuff like that. But the buyer, again, they're coming from the outside. They can kind of visualize it, but they don't have the same level of understanding and comfortability, I can't speak, that you do. So let's look at it. Customer concentration. Now, this is one of the groups I refer for M&A deals. And if you don't have an M&A attorney, reach out. You need an M&A attorney. But they put out stats the other day. And one of the partners talked about that he sees this everywhere. Customer concentration can kill your deal or can severely devalue it. And so here's an example. You might have a company that should be worth $8 million, right? But because of customer concentration, it's $4 million. And let's explain why. So customer concentration, because we have a great main customer. Going back to the risk, going back to what owners think, right? You know that customer. You've dealt with them for 10, 15, 20 years, but I don't know them. How do I know that when you leave, they don't leave? I've got a note to pay on this money. And remember, it's got to survive and thrive. Survive and thrive. So how do I know that when I give you this money, that customer doesn't bolt and this company closes down? They've been with us forever, right? You hear this, man, it's a great customer. They've been with us forever. I'm not saying fire the client, obviously. I'm saying you got to diversify. You've got to move to different directions. So no single customer controls the business. Now, it's not always single customers. Sometimes it can be 2 or 3. In this slide, I said single, but think about it like this. If you lose, your A client, if they went away, does the company shut down? Or if that's A and B, if A, B, and C, a good rule of thumb here. Let's see if I put on the slide. Yeah, good rule of thumb is 10%. No one customer makes up more than 10% of your business. Losing one hurts. It hurts, but it doesn't break you. It hurts, but it doesn't break you. So your revenue, you can push this up to 20% if you need to. I mean, you can see stuff like that. But again, just do the math. And you can have ChatGPT or something like this do the math for you if you don't know the math. Okay, well, I'm gonna sell my company for $10 million. What are the typical loan terms on that? Okay. Now, if this company here, company A, leaves, just to make the math simple, can the new buyer still cover the note? And if the answer is yes, okay. And you understand the customer concentration from the standpoint of revenue spread out 10%. If you have a company that's doing $10 million a year and you're making $1 million, I mean, and they're doing $1 million of revenue, then that's 10%, right? Now, if they're doing $5 million of your revenue, then that's 50%. So simple math, right? So just figure out what customers are there. Now, what customers are making up your concentration, and is it over 10 to 20%? It could be more than one. It could be 2 or 3. You can also see this play out this way, where let's say that you're doing $1 million of revenue now, and then you go out and you get one new customer, and that one new customer does another million. So now you're doing $2 million a year, but 50% of your business is from this new customer. So sometimes owners will do that. They'll come in and they'll land a big client and they're really happy about it. But it doesn't mean that this new customer, going back earlier to you had a great year, stuff like that. It doesn't mean that new customer is going to stay. There's just now risk. Buyers will not value that the same way that you do. Special pricing. This doesn't come up a ton, but it is relevant because owners think that the client, earned a deal. They've been a good client. They've been with us for a long time. I just handled it myself. But the reality is, just because that they're a good client and that they have been with you for a while and you took special care of them, doesn't mean the buyer wants that, right? So you need to have pricing rules, right? Pricing rules to help guide you. This will help you show on all your contracts, all your clients, all your deals, these rules were in play. Now, these rules don't have to say that every deal closes for, 15% margin. You might say that, your range is 13 to 17%. And, let me make a little caveat here. make sure you think through these rules, because what you don't want to do is give salespeople no real guideline on these, because all of a sudden they're getting commission and there's no real rules to help them understand how to make the deals. And they make rules, instead of getting 13% margin, is 10%, and 10% you're not making really any money, right? So understand that before you implement this, that you really need to make sure what kind of rules are in place. But you need rules that anyone can apply. And that, when I say anyone, I mean the salespeople, the managers, stuff like that. The new buyer, they understand, okay, 13% is the range. Everything's in here. Some deals, 20% of the deals are at 17%, 20% are at, 13%, and the rest is the 60% here is somewhere in that range, right? So look at it like that. No customer depends on you as the owner, to approve discounts, right? So the discounts they're baked into these rules, right? So the rules help the sales team, the manager, the COO, the CMO, whoever is doing this for you, understand what the rules are, when they can be applied, how far you can push them. But you don't want to have deals to where all of a sudden, you as the owner gives this customer 11% because you like them. They've been with you a long time. The new buyer, they're going to be nervous about that. They're going to be not really sure what's going on with this. And this gets to the hard part of all of this process, is that the owner is very comfortable with this stuff. They're very comfortable that they know these clients. They know how far they can push stuff. They know all of the swings of the market. The new buyer can visualize it, but they haven't lived through it. Until you've lived through something, you don't know the experience. So you can visualize jumping out of a plane, right? We can watch a video on YouTube. You can ask someone, you can think about the wind hitting your face, but until you've done it, you don't know what the true adrenaline rush is like, the fear, the excitement, the panic. You don't really know until you've done it. So the buyer, just like jumping out of a plane, can watch those videos, they can hear you talk about the business, but until they've experienced it, they don't know the real thing. And the real thing in business is conversations, it's relationships, it's contracts, it's all this stuff. And so understanding how much you can push someone, when you got to pull back, all that stuff, you can tell them. But years of practice, you can't just relay this information to a buyer and assume that you can relay everything to them unless you have it written down. You have guidelines, you have rules, you have things that help buyers understand where you're at. Okay, so let's talk now about legal issues. Legal issues, they do come up. So you don't want to have any open claims or lawsuits. That's the first thing. That should be obvious. If you do, get them resolved. Unpaid fines, same thing here. If you're trying to sell your company and you have a bunch of fines that aren't paid, it's going to be discovered, and you have to pay it. Right? The new buyer's gonna say, no, you got to pay that. So go ahead and pay that stuff off. If you got lawsuits, closes. Nothing hiding in the background. And I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to speak too directly here. But what I will say is, first, talk to an M&A attorney. That's why you got to have a great M&A attorney. But in the background. So if the lawsuit was 20 years ago, it's been done, it's been settled, and it's never come up again, M&A attorney, talk to them. Probably don't need to get into a bunch of that stuff. If it was 5 years ago, definitely do. Right now, if you had to sign an NDA, you can't talk to your attorney, get that issue put forth. But the buyer, if it's a good buyer and you're trying to attract a great buyer, a premium buyer, they're going to discover stuff like this. So talk to your attorney, make sure that you understand what's going on here. Worker classification, dealing with this right now with the client, right? So make sure your workers are classified correctly. These laws are changing. I was just in a client's office the other day, and he was talking about his attorney just made them fix something that they had been doing or hadn't been doing, can't remember what it was, because of this. Now this is more, you see this more going to be with the W-2 versus the contractor classification, right? Oh, that's an M. The contractor classification. And so get an attorney that specializes in this and make sure that this is being properly followed. I can't stress this enough. You don't want to sell a company and the buyer looks at it and their attorney, their counsel goes, oh, this person thinks they have a bunch of contractors, but really they're W-2s. And when you buy this, you're going to have W-2s. That's going to impact all kinds of stuff. No risk of back pay or penalties. Again, this is why you got to have great attorneys that specialize in labor law, potentially in this case, to make sure that you're not at risk of stuff like this. Other thing, license and permits. All your licenses need to stay current. Also, you're going to ask, are they transferable? Same with the permits. So license and permits And contracts. Have your lawyer look at your license, permits, contracts, leases, everything, and say, hey, can this be transferred from me to the new, or from my company, or from me, depending on personal or not, to the new buyer? That's going to dictate the type of sale that you can do, understanding the transferability of stuff like this. The next thing is key staff risk. Key staff risk. And this is going to be important whether you're the owner or the employees, but no one person holds the business hostage. No one person holds the business hostage. Now, you've probably heard the term golden handcuffs, right? Golden handcuffs. And we see that with, like, pharmaceutical reps or big companies. They have golden handcuffs on their employees. I talked to an owner one time, and I was talking to him about my concern at the time I owned a business. And I was talking about, my concern with some of my key staff leaving and stuff like that. And he goes, my staff, my top guys can't leave. He goes, they can, but they're not going to leave because I have them tied up so good. So he had really good contracts in place to make sure that they were going to stay. Not only are they going to stay while he's the president, they were owned by PE, the CEO. Not only going to stay while he's in charge, they're going to stay through the transition. And so there's ways in which you can give phantom equity. There's a lot of things you can do to make sure that key employees stay. But the big thing is you don't want key employees to hold the business hostage. So if they do leave before you sell, after you sell, whatever, that the company's going to crumble. Knowledge needs to be spread across the team, right? So this gets into something we'll talk about in a minute, SOPs, stuff like that. But knowledge really needs to be spread across the team. The more people understand, they're cross-trained, they understand what's going on in the company, the less likely it is that you're going to have one person holding the business hostage. Oh, yeah, and there it is. Use golden handcuffs, right? So use golden handcuffs. So I'm talking to a buddy of mine, about doing an interview on. He's an expert in helping people escape golden handcuffs that are, for bigger corporations and stuff like that. And that's kind of his thing. It's getting out of golden handcuffs. But there are ways to use them, and so make sure that you talk to your attorney, and get some advice on what the legal ways are, going back to the contracts and stuff, to make sure that you use these for your key staff. And you can use this so that they can stay, and when you exit, they stay. And if there's earnouts, stuff like that involved, which there might be, you help ensure that you get more earnout because, let's say that Tom here, Tom is a key employee, right? And so you need Tom to stay. You know that if Tom leaves, that all of a sudden that the odds that this is going to be a successful transition goes way down. Well, if you use these golden handcuffs, as we're talking about here, you may give them phantom equity. There's a lot of ways you can do this. And all of a sudden, now Tom stays and your earnout becomes more secure. So that's just something to consider there. Owner dependency. Now, the easiest test for this is that the business runs without you for at least 1 month, right? So go to Thailand, China, Africa, Europe, stay at home, turn your phone off for a full month, and make sure that when you come back, there's going to be things that aren't perfect, right? But no major fires are going on. And that's key here, right? You serve as support, not rescue, right? You're support, not rescue. If you're rescue, the business can't survive without you. You're always putting out the fires, right? So you need to be support, helping support people in that way. Okay. You're not the safety net, right? So don't be the safety net. Next thing here. Too many things. Operational independence. Does the business run without the owner? Okay, so now we said we're going to go on for at least a month. Here are some things to make sure that you're doing for this. Decisions live with the right people. So sit down right now and go, okay, well, who are the right people on my staff to make decisions, right? It might not be the admin. That person might not be able to make the right decisions. Maybe on your schedule they might, but on pricing, well, we have these rules. On hiring and firing, we have things in place, we have procedures in place, right? So decisions live with these employees, and those employees can make those decisions so that I can take off a month and the company still runs. It makes money, it's operational. I come back and everyone's glad to see me, but they still got their paychecks, no major issues, we're still going ahead. And a lot of owners, they think that this is something that they don't want to do because there's a lot of pride involved. Like, I am the business. Don't have that mentality. If you don't think that you have the staff to do this right now, then work on hiring staff that can help you. Maybe it's a new hire, maybe it's replacing a current person, maybe it's a combination, but understand that you need the right people in place to help you grow this company and to make it more valuable. And with those right people, if you incentivize them properly, they will help you do this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but let's go back through it just to make sure that we don't miss anything. And again, check out the second link below if you want a guide to kind of help you start this process of where you're at in each category. It's below. It's the second link below. If you're ready to go to exit now, join the exit ready cohort. Whenever you see this, you can click the first link and it will show you the current times and dates of the next cohort getting ready to start. So pricing rules exist. We talked about this. Sales close without you, right? So if you said that your pricing rule was 13 to 17%, I think we said earlier, right? 13 to 17%, then do you have to sign off on when someone does 13% versus when they do 17%? No. You know that they can do that. Now you might talk to managers saying, hey, Bob here, all he does is sign 13% deals. Why is that the case? Are we sending him to the right clients? Is he not good? Is he too weak? And does he not know closing tactics? I don't know. Or is our marketing strong enough? I don't know what's going on here. But Bob's only signing 13% clients. But Dave is signing 17%, right? So Dave's over here crushing it. What's the difference? So you can start to ask those questions once you have these rules. But what you don't want is you to get the phone call and saying, hey, we need to close this customer day after day, and you're the person going, okay, well, let's drop it down to 12, or let's drop it down to 10, or whatever it might be. The pressure's always on you. Going back to what we said a minute ago, the company has to run without you. So these rules in sales go without you. You don't have to be the person involved. So revenue, just to be clear here, revenue does not depend on your presence, right? It doesn't depend on your presence. So you need to be able to take off a month, come back, and if this is kind of our normal flow chart we're saying here, wherever you're at in that season, it looks like that. It doesn't look like that, just because you're gone, right? It looks like a normal month. Okay, family in the business. Now, this comes up a lot. I say a lot. It comes up. Worked for the company last year and the year before, and they had family in the business. And this was not a company to where it was specialized skill that you had to retain the family, right? So it wasn't like rocket scientists and these were all engineers and you needed their expertise. It was just a normal business, but it had family in the business. And a lot of buyers were very skeptical of that, even though these are just normal jobs you can replace. So if you have specialized jobs, just understand that it's going to be harder for you to convince the buyer that family can stay. But you have to make sure the roles are clear. So I've got an owner right now, and there's a family member in the business, and they do the accounting because he trusts that person to do the accounting. And I've told that person, okay, to sell the company, you're going to have to transition this person out and put a new person in because this person isn't going to stay post-transition anyways. And so the new person is going to hire someone. So as we go through this process, either you need to hire someone and have them in place or work with a potential buyer to let them put their own person, maybe hire a fractional CFO that can manage this. There's a few ways we can do this, but family rules have to be clear and understand that the pay needs to match the work, right? So if you're paying a family member, $80K and they're giving you the discount, it doesn't mean they're going to work for the new owner for $80K, especially if that job is a $100K job. It doesn't mean that. It just doesn't mean that they're going to say, well, I'm losing $20K here a year, and I did that because Uncle Tom hired me. No, they might say, no, I want this $100K, right? I want this. And so buyers are going to factor that in. It's going to hurt your value. On the other end, if you're paying them, it's a $100K job, and you're paying them $300K, well, a buyer will understand, okay, this is really a $100K job, it's not a $300K job. You can knock that off, but you still might have to replace them, right? So you come into the spot to where you still might have to replace this person. The business does not rely on family ties. Okay, so if a lot of your contracts, a lot of your operations, a lot of your sales, if anything is tied to the family, the buyer might be concerned that as soon as they buy the business, these people change their mind. They're not as excited about the company as they once were. They take their business elsewhere. They leave and go work for someone else. These are things that might make a buyer skeptical. So the better you can remove this, the more likely you are to have success when you sell and you value your company. Scale engine. And so can it grow without breaking, right? Now, let's put a caveat here. If you're doing, let's say you're doing, 10 million in revenue. Well, that's terrible. My handwriting is bad, but it's not that bad. So 10 million in revenue right now. You're doing 10 million in revenue. You're not going to be able to figure out what systems and stuff you need to have in place for a $100 million company. You're just not there. Unless you ran a $100 million company at the top level, you're just not going to know, right? So it's not saying can it grow to 100 million. You don't have to have those systems in place. In fact, those systems probably wouldn't even help you. A lot of big companies have systems in place that aren't helpful for small businesses. It just means, can you go from 10 to 11 to 12, maybe to, let's say 15, just to put a number on it, without breaking, right? And so a lot of owners don't have the systems even in place. So there is nothing that can grow because they don't have stuff documented. Saying, okay, this is how we're going to scale. This is how we hire, fire. These are our sales processes. These are our marketing processes. We don't have that stuff in place right now. So we talked about pricing already, so it has clear rules. The margins margins hold as volume increases. Now, again, we don't know about the margins for a $100 million company. That's not us. We're just saying, okay, if we go from 10 to 11, can the margins hold? Or to 12, can the margins hold, right? We want to understand those type of things. That's really where we have to be. And anyone can price inside guardrails, right? So the guardrails help us understand this. We said for this example, it's 13 to 17%. Great. Anyone doesn't mean the admin can. It just means that anyone in these roles can price inside the guardrails. The guardrails help us understand what the rules are, when they can be applied. Maybe, I don't get into hypotheticals here, but, understand that we have these things so that we can build this company. And we know that as we grow, that this margin is going to hold from 10 to 12. At 20, at 30, we're not really sure because we're not that big. We don't know what those type of companies will require. Okay, so part of the way that we understand this is we have SOPs and they get used daily. We understand that our SOPs are part of our business and they're getting used daily. This could be sales SOPs, this could be operations, this could be finance, whatever they are. You need to have them documented in a central hub and they have to evolve, right? So just like we can't know what a $100 million company is going to need for SOPs, we do know what a $10 million company is, and they shouldn't be the same SOPs as a $1 million company. So when we're doing $1 million, those SOPs, they were great, but they probably changed it, 5 million, and maybe they changed it again at 10 million. They have to evolve as the company does. So how do you make sure that your SOPs are current? Well, you're using them daily, and you're reviewing them hopefully weekly. And this doesn't have to be like a long 3-hour process. Just what happened? Did it work? Did it not work? And did it not work? Was it the employee's fault? Was the SOP not clear? Like what's going on there to make sure that the SOPs are current, they're working, and they don't need to be changed, because it could be that the employee followed the SOP to the T and it caused a problem. Well, that SOP needs to be updated. It could be the employee did not follow the SOP and all of a sudden we have a mad customer because our employee just kind of skipped through this process. It could be that the SOP wasn't very clear and the employee made a decision and they thought it was the right thing to do, but the SOP didn't really guide them, and so the customer's mad, but the SOP needs to be updated, right? So there's a lot of ways. That's why you have to make sure that they're being used daily, but reviewed weekly. Okay, so next we want to make sure that capacity is planned ahead, right? We want to make sure that capacity is planned ahead. What is our current capacity? Are we there? So if our current capacity is, we'll say 100 widgets a day. Okay. are we actually hitting that? No, we're hitting 80 widgets a day. Okay, what do we got to do to get to 100? So let's understand that. And then if we do that, what does 120 look like? What does 140 look like? We should know that, we had 7 people on staff from 40 people, 40 widgets to 60 widgets, but then we had to hire the 8th person, and the 8th person got us from 60 to 80, but now as we go to 80, we should expect that at 100, we're going to hire another person, right? We should have resumes, we should have all the stuff in place to be ready for that. We should be recruiting, understanding that once we go from 80 to 100, we will need to do that. Same with the cash flow. Like, do we have the cash to cover the cost of the widgets? All that kind of stuff. Hiring follows demand, right? Like I just said, we understand that, okay, these are the things that we're worried about. When we go from 80 to 100, we're going to need to hire someone else. So what is our hiring practices for this? Reports get reviewed weekly, ties into your SOPs. Once a week, you're probably having a quick meeting with your key staff, saying, okay, key staff, we're selling 80 widgets a week right now, or a month, whatever I said a minute ago. We're selling 80 widgets. We're trying to get to 100. What's sales doing to get us there? What's operations doing for fulfillment? Do we need to order more widgets if we get that order? Do we have resumes? Have we talked to people? Do we understand what the market is for hiring? Are the rates that we're paying right now market? Have that shifted? Because it could have been a year ago since we hired someone. Has the rate shifted? Did it have to be remote? All those questions need to be asked and answered so that you are prepared for when you hit that next batch of 20 in this case. Okay, so next, strategic position. Strategic position. Why does this business win? And let me just pause here and say this. If the answer to this question is you, like you are the reason this thing wins, you're not going to sell for a lot of money. I've had an owner one time doing 30 million a year in revenue, 30 million a year, and he told me, well, if I go away, the company shuts down. Okay, great. Well, who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for a $30 million company if you go away? Nobody is the answer, because you have said that if you leave, the ship sinks. Why would a buyer trust that you're going to stay around? Now, you can sign contracts and stuff like that and agreements. Okay, maybe the buyer feels more comfortable, but what if you get hit by a truck the next day, or you die of a heart attack, or something like that happens, right? Or you come into a coma. All this stuff can happen. The world is wild. A buyer will look at that and go, wait, you're the reason this company is thriving, but when you go away, it falls apart. What am I paying for? I'm paying for a hope that you stay around. That doesn't sound like a smart deal to me. Okay, so why does this business win? Let's look at this. Customers need to pick you for a clear reason, right? The clearer you can make this, the more valuable your company's going to be. This could be the speed of your delivery. This could be the quality of your product. You could sell a cheap product or a top-end product, but you have a clear reason why people are choosing you, right? People choose you because of this particular reason. It doesn't depend on you personally, right? And the relationships live with the company. And this is so hard for owners to really live through, that the relationship, the sooner you can pass it off to your sales team and your operations, the more valuable your company becomes. The sooner you can pass off the relationship to your company, to your employees, the more valuable your company becomes. It's tough because owners want to be the star. They built this thing. Blood, sweat, and tears has helped them get here. But in reality, when you think about selling, you're going away. The new buyer's coming in. The employees are probably going to stay, right? So the customers need to think of your brand as your company, as who they're buying from, not from you. Okay. And so if you're sitting here and you're going, okay, well, man, that is a lot of stuff. That is a lot of stuff. Well, going back to what I said earlier, and I'll pull this slide up here so you can see this. Going back to what I said earlier, this process that we've gone through here over an hour now. This is why this process is so important, to understand your current value. What's your current value? what's your exit value number? Right, so if your current value is 3 million, but you want to retire for 6 or sell for 6, but you don't know that you're worth 3 now, you might think you're worth 6, and all of a sudden you go to market and find out you're worth 3. You might find out that you want to sell for 6 and you're worth 6. Maybe you're worth 8 or 10. Maybe you're worth more. You're like, okay, I'm ready to exit now. I wanted 6. I can sell for 10. Great. But if you don't understand your current value and then your exit value number, I keep doing that, your exit value number, if you don't understand those two numbers, how can you build a business that will get you this number? Because most owners overestimate this. Most owners overestimate. Let's see here. So if they need, $3 million to retire, they assume that their company's worth 3, and a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's worth like 1.5, we'll say, or 2 or 1. A lot of times these two numbers, what the value of the company is wrong, right? It does not equal that. It does not equal that. But they need 3 million, right? That's their actual need after taxes and stuff like that. They need 3 million. But the value of the company actually equals 1.5. So my suggestion to you, thank you for staying this long, is a couple things. One, download the free Google assessment tool. It will be a good starting spot to help you go back through some of the things we talked about today. And for almost all categories, there's 4 options, so you can kind of grade yourself on it. And then pick the one that you can start focusing on now. And start fixing the things in the business that you know that you have control over. So it might be finances, right? Sit down with your CPA. My suggestion to most small businesses is they need a fractional CFO. It's the most underutilized tool in the business. I'm not one, so I'm not pitching my own book here, but a lot of people need one. If you say, okay, well, let's get the finances fixed, then perhaps it's operations, it's SOPs. How do you understand your business's value today, right? Because maybe your SOPs are good, maybe not good enough, right? So getting a current valuation of what your company is currently worth with a range that your company trades for, right? So if your company trades for a 4 to 6 based upon your type of industry, where you're at, stuff like that, as I described earlier. Okay, how do I get the 6 versus the 4? I'm worth the 4 now, a 4 multiplier. I want the 6. How do I get that? And how long does it take to capture that value? You have to understand how long it takes, because it's not as simple as saying for some of these things as, oh, I'm going from a 4 to a 6 and I've resolved a few of these issues and boom, we're there. Like, it might take 2, 3, 4 years to actually capture that value. And do you want to wait that long? Maybe a 4 multiplier is all you actually need. So you have to ask these questions. So download the free assessment tool below. And if you're like, you know what? I want to hear from professionals. I've lined up 10 great professionals for this cohort as of the start of February. If you're at a later date, you can check out the current details, but start with the exit ready cohort, and you will hear from these speakers on how to get your business best ready to exit, so that when you go to sell, you can make the most money by attracting a premium buyer. If you got any questions, reach out. I hope you enjoyed this, and we will talk real soon.